Ci senti? Vedi che non siamo noi che non funziona.
No, aspetta un attimo, che io disattivo.
Siamo noi che non
Francesca, potresti...
Ci senti? Vedi che non siamo noi.
Mi sentite?
Sì, dal mio...
Siamo noi che
Francesca, potresti...
Mi sentite?
Sì, dal mio... Francesca, potresti...
Ok.
Mi sentite?
Facciamo così, trasmette Sabrina. Sabrina, non mi senti?
Si sente tutto un eco.
Facciamo così, trasmette.
Sì, perché... Spegnete quel
Sente tutto un
microfono.
eco.
Spegnete il microfono.
Sì, perché...
Spegnete quel microfono.
Sì, perché...
Ora va meglio, vero?
Mi sentite?
Ok, perfetto, va bene così. Cominciamo.
Ottimo.
Ok,
Ok.
ora va meglio, vero?
Mi sentite?
Ok, perfetto, va bene così.
Ottimo. Clicca su ICCSA. Adesso mi sentono.
Ok, perfetto, va bene così.
Ottimo. Diretta di YouTube.
Spento.
Ok.
Okay, apologies for the delay. We had serious technical issues in the room. Stai collegato? And we are going now to start the session on sustainability performance assessment. So welcome everybody. There's 3 presentations in this session. The first 3 are delivered in presence, while the 4th will be virtual. So because of technical delays, we have, I apologize for this, to squeeze the time. And so please keep your presentation within 10 minutes so that we can at least a question and hopefully some discussion. What I would also like to ask is that everybody who's connected online, and I think it's only Francesca, should please switch off their microphones while they are not presenting or asking questions. So we can start with the first presentation, which is by Luigi Santopietro and Francesco Scorza, about implementing solution for CCAP transport sector towards climate neutrality. Please, Luigi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'm sharing the presentation.
I will give you a signal when your time is about to finish.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Luigi Santopietro. I'm a PhD student of Laboratory of Urban and Regional System of Engineering of University of Basilicata. So, the European Green Deal and its strategic action plan are engaged in develop and implement solutions for sectors that produce relevant greenhouse emissions, and among them, the transport sector is most relevant. Indeed, the transport sector is the most relevant sector that produce relevant emission in terms of pollutant emission and greenhouse gas emission. It counts more than 1,000 employed, and it's around 5% of the European GDP. So it's a relevant sector where it's necessary improve and find solution to reduce greenhouse gas emission. In this way, the sustainable smart mobility strategy is it's a document and an initiative of a European Green Deal that is engaged in develop those action. And in this paper, we suggest or we provide a methodological approach to evaluate the greenhouse emission from private vehicle fleet. The dataset investigated for the private transport sectors are sales related to the annual oil consumption provided by the Italian Ministry of Ecological Transition, the vehicle fleet provided by a national agency, the Italian National Automotive Club, and the vehicle fleet classification per year of registration and Euro classification provided also by National Automotive Club, and at least some data deriving from private databases of insurances like Unipol, SAI, and ASIA database. The methodological approach applied to vehicle fleet start from the annual oil consumption divided per province, and is based on the Italian National Automotive Club, intended as a vehicle divided also for province. Then we compute first the fuel ton per province divided for all Italian province vehicles classes, and not distinguishing the type of power supply. And then the fuel consumption of each province vehicle was computed for each province vehicle classes and type of power supply. This value was multiplied by the number of municipal vehicle classes divided per type of power and class. And then we are able to compute the tons of CO2 emitted for municipal vehicles classified per type of power and classes. This approach provides a second step of a validation phase, considering the CO2 emission evaluated by private databases like Unipol, SAI, Insurance, and ASIA. And the CO2 emissions have been computed as CO2 average emission factor, expressed in tons of CO2 per kilometers, multiplied by kilometer driven provided by private database, as I said, and multiplied by number of total cars, deriving from the methodological proposal. So, in order to perform the first results applying this methodology, were selected three municipalities, or three small municipalities of south of Italy, specific Ginestra municipality, Pietragalla municipality, and Castel Saraceno municipality. They are selected because Castel Saraceno municipalities has only transport infrastructure, the road network, and so the total CO2 emission related to the transport sector should be addressed to the road network. Then Ginestra municipality, that is another municipality smaller than Castel Saraceno, and with the same condition in terms of transport infrastructure. And at least we consider another small municipalities with a population under 5,000 inhabitants. That is Pietragalla municipality. That is one of the municipality with an industrial area in the Basilicata region that is located as I said, in south of Italy. And so, in these last cases, the the CO2 emissions are related to a mix of industrial activities and private transport activities. So, at first, we classified the vehicle fleet per year of registration from Automotive Italian Club. And in this graph, we consider the year of registration of the cars and the total cumulative private vehicles in three lines. Then we also classified the private vehicle fleet with the Euro classification. It's interesting to observe that we have an average value of under 20% of vehicles of with a classification Euro 5 or Euro 6 compared to the
2 minutes left.
overall counts of vehicle for municipality. Then we computed the total CO2 emission of the private vehicle fleet for the three municipalities, and how we can say the major emissions are related to the diesel motors. Then we also distinguish the number of among the private vehicle fleet, the typology of vehicles in the three municipalities, and from this classification, it highlights also the economical structure of these three municipalities. Indeed, Pietragalla, that has an industrial areas, has the highest number of light-duty vehicles and also tractors related to the food industries insisting in Pietragalla municipality. So we also provide a set of first assessment of action related to reduce emission from the private transport sector for the European initiative of Covenant of Mayor, because of the three municipalities specific, Pietragalla and Castello Saraceno, are Covenant of Mayor signatories, and the Ginestra is submitting to the Covenant of Mayor. In terms of designing intervention for the SICAP transport sector, where SICAP is the Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan developed in the Covenant of Mayor initiative, we highlight that a relevant number of vehicles powered by diesel motor and not in line should be replaced with more recent vehicles with the recent normatives, and the intervention provided should have as main target private cars, because they are the main CO2 emissions. So, concluding and looking to the future perspective of this paper, we can say that developing intervention related to the reduction of CO2 emissions for SICAPs represent an opportunity in supporting local action related to energy and climate targets. And also, if the previous researchers developed remarked the fruitful aspect of sectoral approach, the cities and territories should be evaluated as a set of systems. And at last, the future perspective of this research are related to the improvement of the methodological approach for private car fleet. So thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Luigi. Is there any question from the audience? So just a very quick, and please keep it short. What kind of policies could be implemented at the urban level to reduce the emissions from car?
they can be implemented some improving green and blue infrastructure and and sustainable infrastructure for the sustainable mobility as bike lanes in order to reduce the traffic related to the private car fleet.
Okay, let's hope there will be some room for discussion at the end, so we can come back to this answer. And the second presentation is by Rachele Gatto, Luigi Santopietro, and Francesco Scorza, and it's about tourism and abandoned inland areas, development demand, a critical appraisal. Who's going to present? Please, 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 who's going to present? Come on, please, we're late. Okay. So for you, Rachele, 10 minutes, and I will give a sign when time is about.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to talk about tourism and abandonment in inland areas. Development demand, a critical appraisal. The essay starts with describing territorial abandonment, the population, and critical trends in order to better understand the characteristics of inland rural areas. There are sort of consolidated development in these kind of territories where tourism is the first main economic engine, and another type of view place-based vision in contrast with at the end the essay will discuss about the case study that are here and discuss about the results. In Italy, we have a loss of population, in particular in the peripheral areas, and in 2038, the population will be all aged, and the median age so is about 50 years old. At the same time, the economic situation shows that we are in deficit, and there are so sort of economic decline. Inland rural areas are territories that cover about 70% of the national territories, and only the 55% of the population lives in there. This type of territories, the Italian national strategy classify two types of criteria. There are a lot of cultural resources, and of course there is availability of environmental resource, but there is the population act, and there are lack of collective service. For this reason, the points that are distant, the municipalities that is about 30 minutes for the first urban center, are classified very, very peripheral areas. In this type, where there are no conditions for a future redevelopment of the territories through regeneration project, tourism is often the last opportunity for these territories. And we select about four kind of project that are in Archipelago Italia. A publication that is so important in the field of architecture nowadays. The policy, for example, Salleo is a project in Borghi Più Belli d'Italia, where this kind of strategy aimed to enhance the territories through tourism policies or marketing strategies, and try to develop a kind of network in Italy about this type of a different type of tourism. In the second case, we have the intervention of Coletta di Castelbianco. Coletta was a ghost town, so the project was addressed to a specific type of users. For the third example is the third case study is Valtellina Social Diary, where the local urban action is the main goal of the expression project. And so while they're going a reevaluation of the architecture, at the same time they will provide collective services for the community. The last one is Cairano, that is a biological village. This college cooperation involves some different type of actors. There were the Master of Science nearby, and some practice like tourist addresses, like for example the wine production. In this case, the connection between private investors and public funds made this kind of project for host people in these beautiful places. Yeah. Trying to define this kind of project, and trying to analyze which were the main attribute of this kind of project. And so in order to compare, we try to select this attribute, that the first is target users, where features and service of the project are oriented towards specific customer, because we will see that all these intervention are the same parameters for to define this kind of strategy. The economic engine is trying to graft other forming economies, is property of the approach top down. And the landscape action is a process including land scale, rural landscape operation, tourism, of course, so business of attracting accommodation, service, at all. And urban development, so if the project can have a local impact, and the weight of public funds in this kind of project. So the intervening between target users, so the attribute, and the project selected, try to frame a vision of all kind, well, of a selection proposal in strategy for this kind of territories. And as we can see, if in this chart, we can observe that public funds were very low, and landscape action as well, while the tourism is always present as a type of economy, but attractor in the end.
2 minutes left.
Okay. The case study of Coletta di Castelbianco is is a completely abandoned town about 200 years ago, and then in the 90s, Giancarlo De Carlo and other private investors tried to renovate these places and addressed the project one type of users, the white eagles, that are people work and travel around the world, and then it's only connection to work. And in this case, this beautiful town that was completely abandoned it was rehabilitated, but at the end we can't how has impact on the surrounding municipalities of the places on the territories. The main goal of the strategy, national strategy, is to repopulate this kind of places in order to have regeneration of this society and society strengths about collaborative project and all, and economic field have a renaissance kind of. So we can see, we don't have economic data strictly related to this locality of the places, but despite the large investment, we ask demographic and economic situation of Coletta has changed, even with the repopulation of this town, and how high is the return of the investment? So the evaluation project, the result, the target are achieved.
Please go to the conclusion.
We in opposite view we have Rovudi, that is a place-based approach, mostly linked to the territories, and so in the next presentation we will see this case study.
Okay, great. That we can see a follow-up. Is there any questions from the room? From Francesca? Okay, no, stay here, please. I have just one short question for you. What kind of actions were implemented with all the money? Was it like a house for €1 or kind of fiscal taxation? I mean, was it fiscal policies or other types?
No, there was a group of private investors
Okay.
that they see these places and they were there to say.
So it's
so
not
beautiful.
It's
No.
not public driven.
No.
Okay, which
It's
begs the question of how sustainable it could be in the long term.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing the follow-up of this presentation. But it's time for us to go to the next presentation, which is about Rovudi, developing knowledge of the places in abandoned in the inland municipalities. Please, Rachele.
Which is the Calabrian case study, Rovudi, could be an opportunity to discuss and debate about the problem of inland rural areas and trying to develop a knowledge of the places in abandoned municipality. This day starts with national purpose for these areas, trying to better understand policy stance and trends. Then these kind of territories are quite homogeneously for some characteristics. In this case, planning tools and trends will help us to define this kind of local areas. Assume that there are no conditions for future repopulation. We try to define a kind of methodological approach which landscape is the main actor for the developments for the strategy of action. And in this frame, we have territorial values that are the main that are the starting point, maybe, to develop a place-based policy. What is natural purpose for inland rural areas? Strategy aimed to reverse this negative trend, mostly based on tourism economy, as we said before. And they are beneficiaries of many resources, including public fund, European fund, national funds, and regional as well. As the selection of these are based mostly on accessibility, and structural disease. The population is, of course, one of the indicator. And if we have a view of the Italian territories in which that is structuring imposed infrastructure, the areas that are far away from the first pole, about 30 minutes, are considered very peripheral. And so there is a lack of collective services. National strategy for the Greek area. So for this local system, trying to define a kind of strategy that the main goal is to reach about 70.8% of the increased number of the inhabitants in the next decade through intensive local development. So the funds will be spent in mobility, and educational and cultural services. And so the investment is really huge if you consider that are 25 billion. The Cancari National Spatial Planning, as we see in this map, is very diversified, because there are some places that are affected in the national park of Aspromonte that, of course, have beautiful point of view and plants. The landscape is characterized by a river that are very long and wide, and there are some common identitary aspects in this type of land. Was the land of the Greek. In these areas, as we see in this chart, the average is very high, and of course there's a loss of population. So, and this trend will be continue because it's an irreversible process nowadays. People leaves for many reasons, and it's a kind of process involved in the other type of aspect and dynamics. So it's a kind of structure. In this case, the main goal of the statute is to repopulate these territories. So all the policies are, of course, structured for this purpose. But what happens if we don't work with the assumption of future repopulation? We expect the enhancement of present value and attention for permanent inhabitants and their quality of life, and of course renaturalization. And this scheme is made by attribute and relationship. the relationship between these attributes is how is the landscape perceived, both both for the people and then for the and then for the actor, the other the stakeholder involved in the design process. For example, we have the morphological characteristics. For example, is related to the land and to the very diversified height and rivers and all the aspects that related to the land. We will see after many of these in the follow presentation.
2 minutes left.
Yes, report of abandonment. These places that are completely abandoned, you don't expect that there are some kind of form of recent agent or recent intervention. But as we see here, there is the lights, the old lights and the new one in a completely abandoned spaces. And here we can see how the nature reappropriate the spaces, and in contrast with the renovation of the church. In these places, all these municipalities are linked in for a kind of infrastructure system in which roads are different in time of preference and in time of and quality of the road. And here Rudy is in very peripheral point, and as we can see, the territory is very there are differences highness, so it's very difficult to access in some areas. In these places, we identify different points where something happened. These points are meeting points, free time, street, public spaces where you can observe people that leave these places in part of the day, and they are so the actors of these places, and they live, they care of.
Please go to the conclusions.
Place, so the interaction between this place and targets define a value in these places that could be a first step for develop a place-based approach. Assume that abandoned small town and village located in the slope of the mountain range could be not a collective cost for the people, and alternative approach for territorial knowledge development, where pneumatic special conditions are together, could develop strategy design oriented to the territories.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rachele. And now I would skip the questions now because it's really late, and I would give the floor to Francesca.
Thank you so much. Can I be allowed to share my screen? Can you?
Yes, just a moment.
Okay. Can I do that?
Just a moment.
Now you can share your screen.
Can you do that now?
No.
Not yet.
It is the bottom. It's next to the camera switch on.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
switch off.
I know. I'm trying to do that, but I mean, can you see my screen?
No.
No.
Can you send me the presentation so we would share it from here? I apologize. I'm really.
Can you see my screen?
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Wow, it's a
Your
miracle,
desktop?
isn't it? It's a miracle. Okay, I'll try to be short and
Great,
on
thank
time.
you.
Okay, Sabrina.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to everybody. Talking about tourism and the transportation system, this is the objective of my contribution. It will deal with the road infrastructure and the question of inclusion. And the case study will be the the analysis of the tourist satisfaction with respect to the travel experience when traveling in the south of Italy. My co-authors are connected through YouTube, and they are Mr. Nicola Montesano. He's the head of the structural territorial structure of ANAS Campania. Giuseppina Natriello and Elisabetta Cecchello, they are from ANAS as well, which is the National Autonomous Company of State Roads in Italy. So welcome to them as well. So let's get down to the premise of my presentation. What is meant by social exclusion, and what is the link between social exclusion and transportation system? Well, by social exclusion, it is meant a process of progressive social rupture which detach groups and individuals from social relations and institutions and prevent them from full participation in the normatively prescribed activities of the society in which they live. The concept is completely different from the concept of poverty, which is the deprivation of basic human needs such as food, drinking water, facilities, etc., etc. What is the relationship between social exclusion and transportation system? It is meant the low accessibility to given infrastructure because there are a lack of services and infrastructures. I paid attention to the previous presentations because the girl was talking about abandoned areas, and the problem is the transportation system there. There is an extensive literature with respect to the issue social exclusion transportation system. Church and his colleagues in the year 2000 presented 7 principles of social exclusion related to transport, and I wanted to highlight 3 of them. A user feels geographically excluded if there is a low accessibility to a given destination because there is a lack of services and infrastructure. A user feels economically excluded because he cannot afford that service because it's really expensive. Time-based exclusion because the departure arrival times of a scheduled service don't match those desired by the users. Although I want to skip the extensive literature review that I came across into, but just want to highlight that, for example, roads, what has come out, it is roads. It is the mostly inclusive transport alternative, and policies should be carried out by administrations in the government in order to make the other systems more inclusive, also from an economical point of view. Tourists prefer traveling by car. In Italy, before COVID-19, 2018, 2019, car is the mostly chosen means of transport by tourists because they can carry more members of the family, they can enjoy the destination by car, etc., etc. Why car is and roads are inclusive transport alternative? Because they are always available. They are not scheduled services because they are always continuous in time and space, and also they are fair systems since anyone, regardless of social class and income, is guaranteed the possibility of traveling on roads. This is a must. So what are the research objectives? To measure tourist satisfaction when traveling along some roads of the south of Italy managed by ANAS. And the tourist satisfaction with respect to the travel experience, you will see in a minute what I mean. And what we did was to employ a CAPI survey, which was employed last summer 2021. It is a computer-assisted personal interview. Tourists were interviewed along some roads, traveling along some roads in the south of Italy, in Campania. Mediterranean, along the Mediterranean highway, along the motorway junction, along the Sorrentina and Amalfitana state roads that are very famous all over the world. So the feedback was made up of 405 respondents, and this was a good result, a sample result. There were mainly men with respect to women, aged between 35 and 44, and they had an occupation, they have a job. Why I'm saying the roads are guarantee of equity? Through the feedbacks coming from the survey, what we did was to estimate a structural equation model, which is a simple. It is a robust statistical method, which is a logical mathematical model based on partial least square algorithm, allowing the analysis of synthetic indices that are the latent variables. So starting from elementary indices, there are called manifest variables. I will tell you in a minute what I mean. Structural equation models can be divided into categories: techniques based on covariance, that they use the maximum likelihood estimation method, or techniques based on variance. They use the partial least square iterative algorithm, and we have used the second technique to estimate our model. The advantages of the second method is the possibility of dealing with complex models, dealing with the small sample sizes, and also the ability to deal with data not normally distributed. So what we did with the sample. So the objective, as I said, was to evaluate the tourist satisfaction with respect to their travel experience with respect to 4 different dimensions related to roads. And they are road maintenance, road safety, quality of service area, and traffic management. These 4 big dimensions are the so-called latent variables that are, of course, made up of several manifest variables that better describe that variable. For example, road maintenance, road surface quality, traffic management, and lane restrictions, just to cite one. Over quality of service, when you stop in a service area, the quality of the toilets, the bars, etc. Road safety, for example, the street lighting. So what we did was to divide the sample into different categories from the socioeconomic point of view: tourists with low income and tourists with medium and high income. What we got with the ICCSA software is the overall satisfaction for, with respect to tourists with low income. It is, it's quite high, it's 5.8, which means that in a Likert scale from 1 to 10, they are satisfied when traveling on these roads. And the factor that mainly affected their satisfaction is road maintenance. This is not a surprise because, of course, when there are road halts, the road also mainly affect a vehicle, and of course they affect the budget of low-income people more than medium and high-income people. Indeed, for tourists with medium and high income, they have an overall tourist satisfaction level of 6.2, and the variable, the dimension, the construct, and the latent variable that, of course, that mainly affected their satisfaction is traffic management. The software that we use, ICCSA, provided an additional analysis, a graphical analysis, reporting, the positioning of a company of a services as perceived by customers, in this case, tourists, providing different level of priorities of intervention. It is a quadrant analysis made up of 4 different quadrants. You see, to be developed means that intervention has the highest priority. Strengths, this means that, it is the strong point of the management. To keep it means that they are happy with the current situation. Low priority, this has a low priority of intervention. So for tourists with low income with tourists with low income, what we got from this analysis that traffic management should be developed. I mean, it has the highest priority for low income people, while road maintenance, I mean, they are happy with the road maintenance because, I mean, ANAS in the last years has a lot invested in road maintenance. So this is a good result. I mean, this is perfectly in line with the policy that the ANAS is currently, carrying out, while the others, quality of service and road safety are okay. For
2 minutes left.
Yes, so I'm almost finished. Tourists with medium and high income, they say that one of the, dimension that should be developed is traffic management. And I go to the conclusions. Roads are generally considered as the most inclusive transport alternatives with respect to other transport modes. Of course, some intervention should be carried out in order to make the systems more inclusive. The issue that I wanted to highlight, and I wanted to leave with this message, is that at the very end of any evaluation analysis, an inclusion analysis should be carried out in any evaluation process, in any feasibility study, because this activity is sometimes, well, I can say most of the times, forgotten. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you for keeping to the time. And I think that was a really interesting methodology, the one that you used. But let me ask if there's any question from the audience. Yes, Francesco, please come here. Otherwise, they will not hear you.
Francesca, I understood and I appreciated the framework in which you place this research. So the main issue that is at the base of the analysis is this concept of inclusiveness, which is a relevant objective that we may consider. Of course, if you think to sustainable principle, car is not sustainable, So there are many other dimensions that should be included in this analysis, also to compare and to enlarge the scope of the result. What do you think about it?
I don't know. This question is addressed to the right person. I'll tell you why. Because I've been working a lot on transport and inclusion. So it is, I'm afraid to say that the car, as you know, is not a scheduled service. So it is always available. So it is the mostly inclusive transport alternative. But I wanted to tell you that the current development in high-speed rail systems, that trains, high-speed trains, this is the trend. They are not the inclusive transport alternative, even if they have very low, they are friends of the environment, because they are very expensive. So be careful, because today there is a trend of making even trains, high-speed trains, more inclusive, because they are very expensive. They are only conceived for business purposes. So this is not fair. So I do understand what you mean when you speak about car and sustainability. Of course, I am a transportation engineer. I am against car, but for tourists is different. I mean, the percentage of tourists, with respect to the passengers traveling all around the world is very, is very small. So they can have an impact on the environment, but not so much on the, at the global level as the other passengers do when using car. At the urban level, the objective, of course, of any administration is to reduce the use of car at the urban level. We are speaking about motorways and highways, which is different.
Thank you very much, Francesca. And I think that was a very nice roundup for our session.
Thank you so much to you, and thank you for solving the problem.
In 10 minutes. I'm really sorry for the problem, and hopefully it will be fixed before the next session starts. So Thank you, everybody, and thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao, Francesco.